Good morning. We're going to start a little bit late this morning. We're waiting for one of our supervisors, had an issue, so we'll start a little bit late. Thank you. All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the May 29th meeting, special meeting of the San Benito County Board of Supervisors. An audio issue? Should I wait? We okay? All right, sounds like we're okay. Okay, so we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Supervisor Crowe.
Ready to begin? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Can I please entertain a motion to approve the acknowledged certificate of posting?
So moved?
We have a first, we have a second.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have no general public comment because this is a special meeting, so we will move on to the regular agenda. First item 1.A is improve employment agreement between the County of San Benito and Esperanza Colio Warren for the position of County Administrative Officer for a term effective June 16th through 2025 through June 16th, 2028. County Council, do you have anything you wanted to report?
Ms. Warren is present today for the board's consideration of this contract. It was fully negotiated with her, and she agrees to the terms and is ready to start work.
All right, I believe the start date is June 16th.
June 16th, correct.
Great. All right, we'll go to public comment, and then we'll come back to the board for further questions or comments.
If you'd like to make a comment on Zoom, please press star under the raised hand icon. And in chambers, if you'd like to make a comment, please provide a speaker card. And it looks like I have no public comment for this item.
All right, we'll bring it back to the board. Questions or comments? Anyone want to?
I'll make a comment.
Supervisor Curro?
I would just like to, first of all, thank Esperanza for being here today. It's a great, it's a big change for our county and our community, and I'm really excited about the opportunity that this brings for us. I also want to thank the board. These meetings and interviews, it was a long process. We had a lot of good debate, good conversation, but it felt really right that we were all on board with this, and I just really want to thank the board for all their support.
Thank you, Supervisor Curro. Supervisor Zanger?
Yeah, echo what was just said. I just say welcome, and very excited to start to work with you.
Supervisor Sotelo?
I don't really have a whole lot to add. I'm incredibly excited and so grateful, and I can't wait. I'm really excited to see what the future holds for all of us. I think we're going to really be headed in the right direction, and so I'm ready to move to approve. So whenever we're ready, I'm ready.
Yeah. And I'll just briefly, again, want to say welcome to Esperanza Colio Warren. And I thought it was as Supervisor Crowe said, a really good process. In the end, I'm very, very thrilled that Esperanza is with us. She's part of this team. She is the right person to lead this organization forward. We have, I think, most, if not all, the department heads here. So we got the whole, leadership team here, and I know they've introduced themselves to our new CAO, and I think over time it'll be nice just to open your arms. I know we all will, and as she steps into the role, we'll take her through the departments and get to know everybody. But for now, just thank you so much for joining our team. I'm really excited, and I know even though we won't have an official unanimous vote, I know Supervisor Velasquez, who's running late, just had a little health issue, very, very supportive of this. So this is a unanimous, I'm gonna put that on the record. This is a unanimous, as long as we're all voting in favor of it here, this is a very unanimous decision here today. So that said, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
We have a first, we have a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor, roll call vote.
Supervisor Kuzmicki,
Yes.
Supervisor Zanger,
Yes.
Supervisor Sotelo,
Yes.
Supervisor Curro,
Yes.
4-0 vote with 1 absent. Motion passes.
All right, congratulations, Esperanza. And we'll move on to 1B, which is receive introduction, presentation on the CAO recommended fiscal year 25-26 budget and provide staff direction as desired. And we have interim CAO Henny Ring and her team here as well. Henny?
Yes, thank you, Chair, members of the board. I do want to call out that the presentation that is attached to the agenda item has been replaced and copies have been provided to the board. As being replaced, it contains additional departmental slides and some corrections to a number of slides. The board and the clerk have provided the copies in front of you, so, and those will be downloaded later. Okay, so are you ready? Okay, all right. Again, my name's Henny Ring, interim CAO. Today's special meeting is the introduction of the fiscal year 25-26 recommended budget. With me presenting today is Budget Officer Dulce Alonso. This presentation will give a review of the fiscal year 25-26 budget that will compare to last year's fiscal year 24-25 adopted budget. During this past year, the administrative team has been in transition. We've had a change midstream with the budget officer position and new budget staff midway through. It has been identified during the presentation of the recommended budget after projections were done that the general fund budget had a significant structural deficit. Our team worked to balance this deficit, which will be presented today to you. The budget is balanced by a combination of reductions, including reductions in filled and unfilled personnel and other costs. There are a number of steps related to the personnel changes that will need to occur subsequent to this budget presentation, including employee notices and meet and confer requirements. Budget also uses short-term one-time funds to close the budget gap. Additionally, as the board had authorized, we have consultants from Baker Tilly that were hired and are actively evaluating the county's funds and the structural deficit. Next slide. So today's actions. Today we are here to introduce the 25-26 recommended budget, and we'll ask that we schedule a public hearing to begin Monday, June 9th, 2025 in the board chambers at 9 a.m. All right, so we'll discuss the budget development process. And it takes months, many months in planning. It starts with the board's priorities for the year. Then we kick off the department process and detailed budgeted instructions were sent out to the departments. Departments then create their requested budget. Administration develops and the recommended budget and introduces it. We then hold a public hearing to go over the recommended budget for adoption. And then in the fall, the books will close and we will return to your board to close out the budget. Throughout the year, there is ongoing oversight to ensure that we are operating within compliance. Next slide. Okay, this is the budget timeline and board dates, just as kind of an overview. Looking at board meeting dates related to the budget, on January 28th, the board adopted its priorities. On April 15th, we provided an update on the requested budget. Also, additionally, on May 13th, Human Resources presented a vacancy report as part of the SB 2561 requirement. And then if you'll see today in the yellow box, which is May 29th, today the recommended budget will be introduced. And then on June 9th, we will be back for the budget hearing where we'll review the recommended budget in more detail. All right, next slide. Just to look back to review the board's policies, here's just a quick snapshot. We had housing policy reform, road improvements, homelessness encampment, including trash cleanup, and then we had tourism, economic opportunities, revenues as a whole. And this is all in establishing the recommendations. We take these priorities into account. All right, Dulce, you're going on this slide.
So in the recommended budget, there's key drivers that are impacting the numbers we are before you today. And they include revenue growth is not keeping up pace with inflation. The cost of providing services is increasing, while programs continue to expand to meet community needs. At the same time, state and federal funding has not kept up with increased rising costs. Wages and benefits have increased in recent years in order to retain talented and provide county-wide services. There's an ongoing need to implement long-term reduction strategies. Some of the expenditure assumptions include, we incorporated vacancy budgeting in the recommendation. All unfunded vacant positions as part of the recommendation will be deleted, with the exception of public safety position in the sheriff's office. This budget begins implementing long-term budget reductions in cost. It does include liabilities and workers' compensation increase at the rate of 1.4 million, pension increases in general fund carryovers. So for our capital projects, we're carrying over $3,854,000. In roads projects, we're carrying over from current year $6,049,000, and those are covered through the general fund. Not included in this budget are cost of living adjustments, as well as health insurance increases. We'll get into more detail as we cover each department later in the presentation.
I just want to call out, just to make sure that it's with the general fund carryovers, it's about approximately 9.9 million. So just the total, because we had two different figures in there, but it's a total of 9.9 million.
So looking at some revenue assumptions, in this year's budget, we constraint revenue growth with expenditures outpacing the revenue. We have incorporated Proposition 172 allocation into public safety budgets. And when we go into the slide on revenues for administration, you'll see a reduction, and I'll explain why. It also does incorporate the CFD's annual revenue going into the portion that is allowed into county operating budgets. And this budget also uses one-time funds as a short-term as a balance strategy. State and federal impacts. The May 14th revision includes state expenditures totaling $321 billion. The state addresses a $12 billion deficit. The governor's approach to fill this gap includes budget reduction, borrowing from special funds, shifting from general funds to other funds to close the gap. The state legislative office predicts a rough economic road ahead. And as far as federal impacts, the federal government still hasn't passed their budget, so we remain to see what that looks like.
All right, this next slide. So this is the 25-26 recommended budget. For governmental funds, the requested budget includes $339.4 million in appropriations compared to the $331.8 million last fiscal year. The general fund includes $107 million in appropriations as compared to $117.8 million last fiscal year. So we'll go to the next slide into some more detail here. Focusing on the general fund, looking at last year, the fiscal year for 24-25 general fund includes $117.8 million in financing sources. This is made up of $14.8 million in prior year fund balance, $34.4 million in decreases to revenues, and $68.5 million in revenue. $117.8 million in expenditures or financing uses for a balanced budget. Looking at fiscal year 25-26 general fund, it includes $107.5 million in financing sources, made up of $5.1 million in prior year fund balance, $26.2 million in decrease to revenues, and $76.2 million in revenue. $107.5 million in expenditures for financing uses for a balanced budget. All right, this next slide. This one is the projecting year-end fund balance. So one change we made this year in the budget process was that we asked departments to do year-end projections. And projections hadn't been done for several years, and fund balances were based on prior year audited statements at the beginning of that year. Doing the projections has helped us hone in on what is going to be received and spent by the year end, and helped us determine what one-time funds would be used. Looking at last year's adopted budget, expenses exceed revenues by 49.2 million. Therefore, a total of 49.2 million, which is made up of 34.4 million in reserves and 14.8 in fund balance, was used to balance the budget. The year-end projection showed us that only 22.6 million, made up of 7.8 million of reserves and 14.8 of fund balance, were actually used. This left the fiscal year for 24-25 year-end projected fund balance of 5.2 million to roll forward, of which 4.4 million in state grant funding was dedicated to the library project, and 735,000 available for other uses. All right. Okay, next slide. So balancing the general fund. Again, shown in this left-hand column, if you look in the kind of in the center of the left side of the numbers there, the column. Last year's adopted budget had a structural imbalance. Expenses exceeded revenues by 49.2 million. Therefore, a total of 49.2 million made up of 34.4 million in one-time reserves and 14.8 million in fund balance were used to balance the budget. For fiscal year 25-26, the recommended budget shown in the right column of that table right there, expenses exceeded revenues at 34.4 million. Therefore, a total of 34.4 million made up of 26.2 million in one-time reserves and 5.2 million of fund balance was used to balance the budget. This shows that approximately 18 million in long-term reductions are put into place to address the structural deficit. The budget uses 34 million in short-term strategies for a balanced budget. All right, so this is a staffing summary. In fiscal year 24-25, there were 665 point, excuse me, this is a little,
0.60.
sorry, I see it now. Okay, in fiscal year 24-25, there was 665.60 full-time equivalent, which we call FTE positions, available by the board. Of those, there were 18.5 FTE unfunded. This year, fiscal year 25-26, this budget recommends 585.30 FTE, with it's going to be 80.30 FTE being deleted. Also proposed is unfunding 4 FTE sworn positions in the sheriff's office. As I shared before, the budget includes reductions in filled and unfilled positions. There are a number of steps related to personnel changes that will need to occur subsequent to the budget presentation, including employee notices and meet and confer requirements. The amount, just for a dollar amount, it's approximately 1.3 million in value of filled positions in detentions, or in deletions, excuse me. All right, next slide. This is you, Dulce.
So this slide is a visual of where the discretionary funding is budgeted. The orange bar shows the adopted general fund contribution in our current year, and then the brown shows our proposed for fiscal year 25-26 budget. As you can see, administration office is the highest. However, keep in mind that this covers over 10 divisions, including general fund transfers to other departments, fire protection, roads, and capital outlay are all budgeted in administration. Sheriff is the highest second, but I want you to keep in mind that they also have the jail operation and they have jail and operations as part of their budget as well. The library is the third highest, and this is because of their capital improvement project. And this year in their budget, it includes the revenue, the funded portion of the grant revenue for the library expansion. And as you could see, that the other departments follow thereafter. So next, we're gonna get into all of our departments and compare last year's budget compared to this year, and what changes have occurred. So we're gonna start with the Board of Supervisors budget. As you can see, there's a increase in expenses, and this increase is mainly in salaries and benefits related to adding a senior executive advisor to the Board of Supervisors budget. It also includes 50% reduction in training and lodging, other reductions we made across the board in services and supplies. It does include eliminating the board's discretionary allocation of $15,000, and it does include a reduction in the cost plan. So next, we're gonna go through administration and all the various divisions that are included. So you'll notice all the divisions across, with the exception of IT, has decreased the expenses. And I'll get into the details of why IT is increasing on the next slide. So part of the changes for clerk of the board's office includes services and supplies being reduced by 25%, 50% reduction in training. There's an increase in revenue due to increased work for assessment appeals that the clerk of the board's office is doing. It also includes an increase in retiree medical insurance. So now if we go into 1010, that's that's administration's operating division. And there was a reduction of salaries and benefits also in the CAO's office. 50% reduction in training, lodging, and meal. There was also various other reductions across the board in services and supplies. And we eliminated the $45,000 out of the budget that we do for our annual employee appreciation lunch. In IT, this one includes an increase. And we did reduce salaries and supplies across the board, with the exception of, so this included also cutting their training, lodging, and meals. But it does include an increase of $1.9 million for technology upgrades. So that includes $200,000 new in hardware, $1.2 million in software increased licenses, $150,000 for computer services. And I just want to point out that it does include increased revenue for dedicated sheriff's office IT employee that's funded by AB 109. And it does include increased cost to retiree medical. So for human resources, it includes reduction in salaries and benefits, services and supply reduction across the board, including 50% reduction in training, lodging, and meals. And there's also a slight increase in cost plan in that budget. So now I'll move on to the next one. This includes, as you can see, this includes their civil grand jury, public defender, Office of Emergency Services, and animal control. And these are all budgeted as administration. You'll notice they all decrease with the exception of animal control, and I'll go into the details on that on the next slide. So grand jury actually increased by a lot because we cut their travels, meals, and that's a big chunk of their budget. And it ended up, and we did other cuts, it ended up reducing the grand jury's budget by 66%. In the public defender, it does include revenue from AB 109, which covers $619,000. But what's new in this budget is we're gonna cover $25,000 for software license. That's also coming from AB 109. But we have two contracts. We have level 1 and level 2 that have set monthly rates. However, the court does order under conflicted out of the county, the judge sets the rate through a court order, and we're obligated to pay whatever that court order identifies as the rate. So there's some impacts there that are out of our control. For OES, there was 50% reduction in training. There was reduction in various services and supplies. And animal control, there was an increase. We took the last 4 quarters of what we have been paying for animal control service and compared it to prior years. And there's an increase that's included as part of this budget. And just as a reminder, the county does cover 55% of expenditures of the operating costs for animal control services with the city of Hollister. All right, so more administration. So ag extension, it includes an increase. So contingencies, we decreased by $1 million. And Honey, did you want to?
Interject just a moment. The general fund contingency is showing a significant change with a reduction of 1 million. This year, we are projecting to use nearly all contingencies, or 2 million. And this represents a 0.9% contingency for the general fund.
For operating. Okay, so some of the details. So we contract out with UC Ag Extension to provide the services. And part of that includes the county providing a space to them, and they run various programs like 4-H out of Ag Extension. Like Henny mentioned, the general fund contingencies is decreasing by 50%, and EMS has reductions in salaries, benefits, and other services and supplies. So moving on to our non-departmental expenditures, revenue, disaster recovery. So all the expenses across these decreased with the exception of non-departmental revenue from the prior, and I'll go into the details on that. Okay, so our 1015 account, this is where this is where the general fund covers transfers out for projects. So this includes our road projects. We're transferring out 7.9 million of general fund to cover the roads. So this includes 6.4 million carryover from projects in the current year so that those could finish. And it includes 1 million new allocation this current year for county roads. It also does include a transfer out for capital outlay, and that's 3.9 million that are related to ARPA projects. And that's now budgeted in this account. And it does include a new CIP contribution for replacing admin, DA, probation, roof, and includes a juvenile sealant, and that's approximately $440,000. This budget reduces the general fund by 1.3 million related to the match of the library expansion. So we are recommending to reduce the library project. And if we go down this direction, we'd have to negotiate with the state and see if that's even an option. So that's included here. It does include a transfer out to fire, and the budget includes 2.85 million increase from our last year's contribution. And the budget continues to fund ongoing costs for the grant writer and lobbyists, and that equals annually 221,000. Out of our 1020 account, this is where we receive our property taxes and our revenue. So we are seeing a $3.5 million increase from prior year. We are seeing a decrease in HDL provided the projections of 129,000 a decrease to sales tax. Not included in this year's budget is Prop 172. It's now part of each operating budget. Normally, we would have it deposited into the 1020. And you'll see a different, I'll point it out on each slide. There's gonna be an allocation going straight into the sheriff's office for operations, jail, DA's office, and fire. And I'll highlight those when we get to those departments. For disaster recovery, on a positive note, we are anticipating $900,000 FEMA reimbursement from COVID claims. So we do anticipate that coming in this year. Budgeted expenses have decreased to related to unspent emergency expenses and ARPA-related projects for this year. And aid to indigents, we see a slight decrease in revenue. Our recommendation for community programs does include a 3% decrease from current year allocation to senior services. It also does eliminate the $30,000 we had this current year for the grant portion as well. So the 3% decrease is $2,622 less than this current year. Okay, so that's all of administration's. Now, we'll get into the auditors. There is a decrease in expenses in the auditor's recommended budget. And this includes reductions in salaries and benefits. Also, $164,000 reduction includes memberships, dues, association trainings, and other lodging, meal, and consultant reduction. County Council. Sorry, I have to keep So County Council does include a reduction from prior year's recommended budget, and this includes a reduction in salaries and benefits, and also other various reductions through services and supplies. So under the tax collector, our tax collector, treasurer, public administrator has 3 divisions under her, and you'll see a reduction in expenditures with the exception of treasurers across the board. So in the treasurer's office, there is this increase to salaries and benefits, but this is offset with revenue that comes in for that increase. And there's a reduction in various services and supplies. The tax collectors does include a reduction in salaries and benefits, and also various reductions in services and supplies. Public administrator includes reductions in various services and supplies as well. All right, so now elections clerk and our recorder. So across the board, there is a reduction in expenses through all 3 divisions. And they include reduction in salaries and benefits. There's a 50% reduction in training, lodging, and meals. And across the board, there was reduction in miscellaneous services and supply. But it does include in the clerk's office reducing the temp help. And in the recorder, as I mentioned, reductions in training, lodging, and meals. Okay. Assessor's office. So assessor's office includes 2 divisions, assessors and GIS, and there are reductions in both divisions. In the assessor's office, there's a decrease to salaries and benefits. There's also a $500,000 reduction in miscellaneous services and supplies. So this includes training, lodging, and meals, and also other miscellaneous categories. In GIS, it includes a decrease to salaries and benefits. So the sheriff has various units, and across the board, you will see a reduction in expenses. And you'll also notice in operation, there's an increase in revenue from our current adoption in his operating division as well as the jail. The increase in revenue in those divisions is due to the Prop 172 being put in the operating budget. So across the board, there was a decrease to salaries and benefits. There's an increase in revenue also in the operating side due to Prop 172 allocation. And there's an increase in range fees that was included in the budget for revenues. As part of the 911 communication, there was a reduction in various services and supplies. The unit, the anti-drug force, that division is no longer funded, and the sheriff is moving away from using this division. The grant, there was really no changes. In the correctionals, there was decrease to salaries and benefits, and there was increase in revenue related to Prop 172 allocation. In the coroner's office, there was miscellaneous reductions in various services and supplies. Okay, so district attorney. Okay, so district attorney, you'll notice there's an increase in revenue from prior year's adopted budget, and this includes the Prop 172 allocation. There's also there was a slight increase in appropriation expenses. And as mentioned, that the Prop 172 increased the revenue. There was reductions in salaries and benefits. Also 50% reduction across training, lodging, transportation, and meals. In victim witness, there was a reduction in salaries and benefits as well. So probation. So probation didn't have a decrease in expenses, but there are other, there was $50,000 from probation's revenue that came in to cover salaries. There was reduction in some services and supplies. There was also in the youth services, reductions in various services and supplies, but there is an increase expense for healthcare services in the juvenile hall, which is also covered by one-time revenue coming in from CalAIM. So going into the library, you'll notice a jump in expenses, and also, and I'll go over what that includes. So for the library, there's reductions in salaries and benefits. There's also reductions across the board in miscellaneous services and supplies. 46,750 reductions, also including training, meals, and other. This does include the 4.72 million increase related to the balance of the grant expansion that was received, but it does reduce the project as a whole to 9.1 million versus the 14.9 million, which still needs to be negotiated and addressed and for the board's consideration. It does include a 9.1 million increase to transfer out related to the library expansion project. It also includes changing their operating models to closing on Saturday to save costs as well. As far as the literacy grant, there's a slight increase in contribution on there, and then in bookmobile, there's a 2,000 decrease related to books purchased, but now, Ag Commissioner mosquito abatement. So the Ag Commissioner has two programs that they run. You'll notice a reduction in expenses in the Ag Commissioner, but an increase in mosquito abatement. Mosquito abatement isn't part of the general fund, but I included it on here because it's covered. It's a program that Ag Commissioner does run. So in the Ag Commissioner's office, there's a reduction in salaries and benefits. There's also $40,000 reduction for outside labor, reductions in automobile trucks and training and other meals and lodging. Changes in the budget will lead to suspending the hemp program due to lack of staffing or resources to continue that. And for the mosquito abatement, there's really no significant changes. So planning and building does include the divisions listed below. Across the board, we see a reduction in all expenditures through all their divisions. So we'll start off with planning. They are reducing, there's a reduction in salaries and supplies. There's also close to a little over 900,000 with reductions to training, to temporary staff, training, lodging, and other consultant costs. For economic development, so this is where we've historically have budgeted 150,000 year over year. We're bringing that down to 25,000. But what that eliminates is the 25,000 for San Benito Resource Conservation District. It eliminates all of our memberships that we pay out. It does reduce the budget by 100,000 related to the prior contract we had for Economic Development Corporation. And it increases 25,000 for Pinnacles National Park branding. So going into Resource Management Agency. So overall, there was reductions across the board through the various divisions. And in Public Works, there's a reduction in salaries and benefits. There's also reductions to temporary help, miscellaneous services and supplies listed on this slide as well. Veteran Services. So we contract with the County of Monterey for Veteran Services, and this budget includes our continued contract with Monterey County for Veteran Services. So Health and Human Services. Across the board in Health and Human Services, they also decrease their expenses across the board, and they are going to be pulling from their funds the deficit you see on the right. So overall, you see an increase in both in expenses in the 221 division. Public Authority includes both increases in revenue and expenses. The Public Health Division includes reductions in revenue and expenses. Community Health, Community Service and Workforce Development reduces in both revenue and expenses. And then the Migrant Center increases in both revenue and expenses. So next we'll move on to Child Support Services, and you'll notice a reduction in expenses there. And the reduction is what accounts for it is reductions in salaries and benefits. So moving on to behavioral health. There is a reduction there's an increase in expenses related to mental health services, but there is also an increase related to the substance abuse. So you'll see how much behavioral health on the left is planning to pull from their funds. And some of these changes include in behavioral behavioral health, changes related to CalAIM mandates, increase in Medi-Cal revenue due to maximized billing under the payment reform, increase the 1991 and 2011 realignment, and then the state payment of 1991 realignment due from 2023-24. In the substance abuse, it includes increased costs for mandated residential treatment programs, increased utilizations of contracted programs for mandated services. County fire. So county fire is its own division. We are anticipating an increase this year, and the revenues increased in this division because we're allocating Prop 172 allocation. It also does include an increase of $2.85 million from general fund contributions for a total general fund contributions of $3.8 million. It does include $133,000 contribution from also Community Facilities District revenue. And it includes pooling $400,000 from fire impact fees for equipment. And I just want to highlight that the increased cost is related to year one of startup expenses for building an engineering company station. Okay, so our budget would be accessible on our website, and our website is listed here, and it's under budgeting and finance, and we'll have it live tomorrow. And going over next steps, and Henny, do you want to cover
Sure.
this?
So next steps will include, well, we've already kind of checked off some of these boxes, the board's priorities, the mid-January kickoff, again, January through March, departments prepared and submitted budgets. March through May, admin reviewed and did a compilation of the budget. Today is the 29th, which is the introduction of the recommended budget. We plan to return on June 9th for the budget hearing. After the hearing and throughout the summer, we plan on working, getting work done on rebalancing the initiative plan, working on the long-term budgeting process. A plan that incorporates the long-term sustainable reductions to bring back to in the fall and in fiscal year 26-27. So looking forward and working on a plan. Final budget will be legally adopted in September, and that's including any necessary amendments due to the state budget. So the recommendation is schedule a public hearing for Monday, June 9th, 2025 in the Board of Supervisors chambers at 9 a.m. So the next slide will be to questions, and just before we get to questions, I just want to just publicly thank the budget team, Budget Officer Dulce Alonso, and admin staff for all their long hours and nights on this, weekends as well, putting this together. I want to thank the county department heads and their budget teams for all the work that they've done, and emergency meetings, sitting down, meeting very quickly and getting information to us. So I want to thank them. Also want to thank our former extra help, Rebecca Campbell, who helped put this budget together and addressing some of the things that we needed to address in this recommended budget. Also, Baker Tilly, who is working on more information that would be presented on June the 9th. So back to questions from the board, if you have any.
Thank you. We'll go to public comment and bring it back to the board.
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, please provide a speaker card. On Zoom, please press *9 or the raised hand icon. And in chambers, we'll start with Shirley. Who? Barbara? Okay.
Thank you. I recognize that every department needs to take cuts. And if things were fair and equitable, I think that all employees understand that the county's facing a difficult situation. And I recognize also that due to the budget situations, not all things have had the time to be fine-tuned. So I hope in the next 10 days that there could be some examination of possible alternatives that might help. But in our case, it seems the decision is not just merely about the budget cuts, but based on contractor versus in-house. For the people that aren't aware, the proposal in our office indicates eliminating all county staff. And this isn't about me because I can leave, but it's about Ella and Shirley. I concede that litigation expenses are cheaper with Prentice Long than some of the counsel that we're using, and so they can be used for litigation. But as far as in-house versus in-house, there's no, they're not less expensive. In fact, I believe that they would cost more over time, and I believe actually that they're not saving anything at the present time when you analyze that. The county had asked when this was considered in '24 to do a fiscal impact analysis of contracting out those services. That was never brought back to the board. I think that's been given up as far as showing that contracting out in-house staff is actually cheaper, because it's not. So the contract in '24 was increased from $42,000 to $91,000 plus the 2% admin fee plus the expenses in anticipation of the layoffs, but the layoffs never occurred and that contract was never reduced. So during this last year, they've been paid that higher amount in anticipation of Shirley and Ella being laid off that were never laid off. So that price was not reduced at the time. The county could, if it wanted to, ask Prentice Long, say, we'd like to reduce your contract and continue the hybrid office that's been working well, and say, reduce your contract for Shirley and Ella and allow them to stay in-house. Because basically, that's how it's been working. So that's my first point, that you need to explore that option. The second point is that, oh man, I have to go faster, that it considers that there's $300,000 that you'd rather pay in vacation payout, of which a good portion is people that I'm talking about right now, instead of just having them continue as an employee. So you're not saving that. Let's see what else. You don't know the long-term costs of this contract. You don't have a multi-year agreement. We haven't considered furloughs instead of cuts of many staff. And I think that I'm done, but I'll submit stuff later for you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Go ahead, Shirley.
Good morning, Shirley Murphy, Deputy County Counsel, but I have taken time off to be here and I'm speaking personally. None of what I'm about to say should be taken as advice of counsel, but also reaction or response to anything I'm about to say should be obtained through advice of independent counsel, because I believe the firm of Prentice Long would have a conflict of interest in this regard. We were not provided any advance warning or opportunity to prepare, so we will provide I will provide a written statement for the June 9th hearing. Replacing in-house staff with private attorneys runs counter to Government Code Section 31,000 and interpretive cases and AG's opinions. Increasing Prentice Long's contract to replace in-house staff would constitute an ongoing fruit of the poison tree problem under Government Code Section 1090. Also, this would, as Barbara indicated, you would not save money. Under Government Code Section, for instance, 31,000.7 prohibits private firms from representing both the board and the assessor, so you would have to hire outside legal counsel for the assessor. There may be other departments, likewise. I know about the assessor because that's one of the departments I advise and represent. Furthermore, under Government Code Section 31,000.6, the board's required to appoint outside counsel upon the request of our elected assessor, auditor, sheriff, or treasurer tax collector in the event of a conflict of interest. And if you don't do that, they have recourse to the court where the court could order you to do so. Some of the admin work would have to be shifted to the CAOs and/or auditors' offices on conflict of interest grounds. Then also, as Barbara indicated, we requested last year an independent fiscal analysis, and the board directed the CAO to obtain it. To my knowledge, that wasn't done, so I am renewing the request to have that done now. But even under our informal analysis, it shows that replacing 2 long-term, highly experienced attorneys will require an increase in Prentice Long's contract. Currently, there are 2 local attorneys, and they're great, they're very promising, but, you know, one's only been licensed for 1.5 years and the other one 3 or 4 years. So more experienced counsel would need to be provided. Currently, the more experienced staff, you know, you're out of their 250 hours per month, you're paying, you know, 4 to 5 hours of their time to drive. And you're paying, you know, travel expenses such as hotel and food that are not included within their contract. Prentice Long does approximately the same amount of in-house litigation as we.
Please wrap up as briefly if you can.
Okay, thank you. We functioned before with 1 office manager and 4 attorneys. We could do it again. On a personal note, we have collectively 54 years of dedicated public service to the county. We've given dedicated service through furloughs, budget, which spreads the paying equally among the whole county team, including the supervisors, rather than costing anyone their jobs. Through budget cuts, we were 30% underpaid for years, as established in the most recent salary survey. We continued to come in consistently throughout the pandemic, and we've worked many hours, beyond 40 hours, on vacations, et cetera. We've never complained or lobbied the board for COLAs, raises, or other benefits. So that concludes my statement. Thank you.
Sure. Next in chambers, Joel Buckingham.
Good morning, board members. I just wanted to relate my experience in terms of going over the recommended budget. At least as it relates to my office, the information that I am getting is that I am going to be asked to potentially lay someone off. After much discussion through the course of developing the budget, our department had, I thought, been informed that we were not looking at this and the budget was in order and that things were doing all right. I've been cooperative along the way to try to mitigate any of the costs associated with the office as much as possible, even during my tenure, obtaining a grant for $200,000 that's been coming in. We've also increased the AB 109 revenues to our departments. The person potentially the subject of that layoff is an extremely dedicated worker who we've actually increased the clerical staff many years ago when PRCS parole efforts were pushed down to the county level. So we increased the staffing to meet that need. That need remains, and yet now potentially looking to terminate that individual, or at least that's the person that's slated. I personally have a number of different struggles with this particular, what is happening with the budget. I feel like things are flying blind, and it causes me a great deal of concern. I know, and I take seriously the board's efforts, and I know you do the best that you can. I completely understand the primacy of the taxpayer and the need to protect his or her funds, if you will, and I'm not trying to suggest anything other than that. I just want to make it clear I'm willing to work with the agencies, the Board of Supervisors, to do everything I can to protect my people, but this has been an extremely frustrating budget cycle for me, as I feel like I've been pulled around. I suppose as I get to know more, I will communicate what more I know. It is interesting, even within what I'm trying to understand and the numbers that are presented, for example, it is related that there's a $49 million budget deficit, and yet for some reason the actuals only end up being an actual $17 million deficit if we're looking at projections, and yet the accumulated fund balances that are being used to meet that are disappearing. And if you go back even a few years, 2022, 2023, according to the information that I was able to find online, it looks like the differences between revenues and expenses were not that high. So I have to admit, I am just at a loss as to what has happened. I want to do everything I can to help the board. I do not need my training budget. I am not fighting giving up on number of my services and supplies budget, but I cannot lose my people.
Thank you. Next on Zoom, Elia, you've been unmuted and you have 3 minutes. You need to unmute yourself on your end. You're unmuted. Can you hear me? Is it? We can't hear you. She's unmuted, but I don't know why it's not coming through. What do you want me to do? Mute it?
Hello?
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Okay,
3 minutes.
wow, I don't know what happened, I was unmuted. Thank you, good morning, and congratulations to the new CAO. Using reserves to fix roads for political purposes is careless financial mismanagement, specifically without a plan for replenishing reserves. Board of Supervisors, please respect San Benito County staff who are the backbone of our community services. As stewards of San Benito County, you owe it to staff to plan responsibly, working with employees, not against them, by protecting the reserves so we can further future challenges without sacrificing jobs or services. It's essential to keep San Benito strong and prepared. Supervisors, please be leaders and take a salary and benefits cut yourselves. If you're asking the staff, do it yourself. Prop 172 by law should have been going directly to departments and not into and out of the general fund. Now it's noted in each department, but does not specify the amount. Senior executive advisor at $300,000 needs to be cut. Absolutely. Public defender, with regards to the public defender, you didn't have an amount, but what is the average dollar amount the judge orders for a conflict, so you can at least have some kind of a budget for there? 2.85 for the fire protection, yet you're looking to hire a fire chief and to establish a fire department when you could simply go back to the table and negotiate with the city. As stewards, your responsibility is to ensure that San Benito County has services and not a decrease. Please listen to your in-house counsel, that they're very bright and they're very smart, and they have quoted you the law, and also, please don't forget that District Attorney Joel Buckingham happens to also be an accountant. He knows the numbers. He knows what he's talking about. Right now, I think that you need to go back to the table and redo these numbers. And if you're asking for cuts, you must do and services. You must also do a salary and benefits cut yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. I want to try to be a calming mechanism here in the room, because I know there's a lot of anxiety. I can feel it. And, you know, first off, you know, I want to start because we formed this budget ad hoc as we got into this process, largely due to all the transition that we've had going on in the CAO's office, the budget officer role. Budgets are a year-long process, at least they should be, and we were really up against the clock. And so the budget ad hoc has been working diligently with staff, and I want to explain some things from our side that I hope will potentially calm some concerns that we have here. So we have identified several red flags to further examine between now and June 9th. There are inconsistencies in the numbers. You know, for one, just from a broad perspective, the admin team has gone through an extensive process to reduce expenditures. We saw it today. in the proposed draft, we're freezing positions, we're eliminating positions, we're reducing other areas of the budget across the board. Still, the general fund is showing what I saw in the quick math, because the numbers have actually changed since the last time we saw them late last week. The numbers are showing a whopping 23% spike in the recommended draft budget as compared with the 2024-25 actuals with regard to spending. To this point, there is no logical explanation for this. I'm confident we're dealing with a math problem, and I also will be honest, we are dealing with a spending problem that we do need to address in the short term and long term. But, you know, when I first, you know, our ad hoc has been in meetings with staff for, I don't know, 2 months now, something along those lines, maybe longer, regular meetings, multiple meetings a week, asking questions, going through some of the numbers. But when I first received access to the detailed, because I'm not a staff member, I don't have all the codes and the logins and all this. I don't have access to the New World system, but we did get access finally to the OpenGov system that's at the staff level that allows you to go in and look at the current draft budget. And when I first got this I'm not an accountant, I was a B+ math student, okay? I worked hard and I got my B's, A- maybe, but I can spot anomalies, and that's what I've said all along. And when I got the access to this about 10 days ago, before the holiday weekend, I dove in, did a relatively logical analysis, what I thought of the focusing on the actuals, because the problem that this county has had that we need to fix is that we have adopted budgets that have been largely inflated on the expenditure side intentionally because of vacancy budgeting, which we're fixing, and some other factors, which we're fixing. We do need to get to a point where we are adopting budgets that are reality. We are adopting budgets that this is what we expect to spend. And if there are unknowns that come throughout the year, we will go into our reserves, our emergency funds. We may do budget amendments, but we do need to get away from the methodology we used because it has really come to clobber us hard this year. And so when I first received access, dove in, did an analysis of the actual projections for 24-25. And Supervisor Velasquez and I have spoken at length about this. The actuals are and should be the baseline from which to work. Now, the actuals for 24-25 do show that we have increased spending quite a bit, partially due to pay increases, partially due to inflation. But we shouldn't have gone from $55 million 4 years ago to what we're seeing today, this astronomical number. That's basically 100% increase in the budget in 4 years. Doesn't make sense, especially when you look at the fact that the actuals for 24-25, according to this draft, showed roughly $87 million general fund. We saw a number a little bit different with the auditor's office of, I believe, $89 million. But what I'm getting at is I did an analysis division by division, because what we have been asking for as an ad hoc is to try to get away from, you know, we've muddied the waters a bit with one-time spending and capital projects being included in budgets without delineating those out and making clarification that, you know, these are one-time and these are operational budgets. But when you do an analysis just of the divisions, division by division in the general fund, department by department, what I found was that the actuals projected for 24-25, in most cases, with the exception of 1 or 2 departments, after all of this, these cuts, the recommended cuts, historic level cuts, you would think our budget would be going down, logically. But after all this, all the divisions, with the exception of 1 or 2, went up in the draft that we are seeing today. After all these cuts, they're going up significantly in most cases. And I understand there will be extenuating circumstances. There will be certain departments, public defender, IT, where we're doing some things that are going to cost some money, but every division shouldn't be going up. And so, and the general fund overall budget should not be going up in the draft that we are seeing. And it is, it's going from, according to these numbers, $87 million up to, I believe what I saw was 107, roughly 23% increase, $20 million increase. You know, we just heard this massive swath of reductions, yet all our division budgets are going up and our overall budget's going up. And I get it, we're in transition, we're changing methodology. It's like changing your game plan in the middle of the Super Bowl. You need the whole year to do the budget, and we're still facing some questions. And there is no logical explanation for why almost all the division budgets compared with the actuals for 24-25. And mind you, in 24-25, our admin team went to the departments and asked to start making cuts months ago, and you're all aware of that. So the 24-25 baseline 24-25 projections for costs should be the baseline. And we do actually need to long-term work down from that because our revenues are not meeting our expenditures. But we do have, I believe, a math problem here, and ultimately we do have a spending problem to address, but I don't believe it's to the level that we're seeing here today. One moment here. Yeah, like I said, $107 million. So this is where I'm getting. This is why we hired Baker Tilly. They're in the middle of helping us out, going through the numbers. We believe there's more work to be done. We wish we didn't have to present this today, frankly, but by law, you have to present something by May 30th, according to state law. We are hopeful. Baker Tilly is aware of what I've pointed out with the division budgets. Again, B+ math student, I'm going to continue personally working on diving into these numbers. I know Joe Paul's office is committed to working. Our admin team is committed. We're going to work together and figure this out. And Baker Tilly's involved, very good firm. They're committed. We got to do this as a team. We're going to get there, but I don't believe we're quite there yet. If that brings at least some of the anxiety down a little bit. And once we figure out the looming question about, why these numbers are going up when they shouldn't be, because again, there's nothing we can point to. It just, we have to go through these division by division and look at what the anomalies are and ask the questions of what's going on. But once we figure that out, we are going to have to get to a point where we budget based off revenues. We budget based off revenues. We do not include one-time monies in our budgets. It is inherently irresponsible. We will not do it going forward. And I will say there are still some other recommendations that we will be working on as a budget ad hoc. We are obviously here today to hear from the rest of the board on what thoughts you may have on some of this and looking at areas to potentially look at and get creative. The public hearing is scheduled for June 9th, and I'm hopeful our consultants working with our auditor's office presented some numbers that were very helpful late last week, admin team, that we iron this conundrum out because these numbers are off. And if necessary, we will be using as much runway as we can before June 30th to figure this out. And we will need to address some of those long-term issues. Couple questions I did briefly have is, do we know, and I don't know, Joe Paul, are you willing to speak to your perspective on the situation? I don't mean to put you on the spot too much, but you've been in this county for a long time. You have, as much experience as anybody when it comes to budgets, finances. Would you be willing to just provide your thoughts on just looking ahead, what we're looking at?
Well, I could mention that I've scheduled a meeting for tomorrow with Baker Tilly to speak with Steve Toller. And I have some ideas about how we can eliminate the noise in the budget and, get down to where the real, where the real costs are, being incurred, and, what costs are being planned. Those are things that, I can be helpful with. At this time, I'm still working off of, old budget projections, that have been provided to me, so, I'd like to work with the admin staff to, get fresh numbers so that, we're all on the same page. Cause, we all have the same goals in mind. We don't wanna do things, to reduce county services. If we have the funds to be able to support services, we should be doing that. But I think we need to, as you allude to, we need to sharpen the pencil to make sure that, that these budgets that are being presented are closer to reality, closer to what actually has happened in the past. I think if we do that, we can spare a lot of this anxiety that, perhaps really is unwarranted.
Thank you, Chair Paul. Supervisor Velasquez, I know you have an issue, but do you have anything you'd like to?
Thank you. First, I want to apologize for being late today, everyone. Some of you might know I've been fighting the after effects of a pneumonia. It's almost 8 months now. And today it decided to kick in on me and take me for a beating this morning. So I had to round up my oxygen tanks and try to stay calm for a while till I can catch my breath. And luckily I was able to come out so I can say congratulations to our new CEO. We're gonna have a lot of work to do together. Now, the budget, I do want to say first off, going through this process, that the work that the board has done in the previous years, I thought was good. You guys did a good job budgeting and understanding the need for the improvements of roads as a big part of your previous budget. I think sometimes tendency to ignore an issue, kick it down the road, and that issue comes back costing you 2-3 times as much. So you guys did a good job of that. The problem we have here, from what I've been going through, the DA, you mentioned it, it's hard to understand what's going on. The numbers aren't making sense. I've gone through this process in the past where I've seen a government agency in deep trouble financially. But when you start picking it apart and you work as a team, you can turn these things around rather quickly. I think there's been a tendency to depend on one-time monies, depend on state, federal, and I think we're all seeing right now the trouble agencies across this state and across the country are gonna find real quick, because all of a sudden that money disappears. We always have to be aware of these issues, and as I went through the budget working on ad hoc, actuals in the budget were so different. I can't operate that way. I need factual numbers, actuals, and that's what we're doing right now. We're making a transition from a way that worked in the past, but it's just not working any longer because of the changes that are happening. We need to know each quarter where we're at, so all of you know where you're at, because it's really important as we move forward with our new CAO. We're working as a team to address issues early. All of you and all your departments, and we all do this. Sometimes we don't even recognize certain things are happening until it's brought to us, and we're, oh, okay, I didn't catch that. What can I do? Well, what we need to do, what I'm seeing right away, or saw right away, is we're not capturing the revenue from the fee structures that we need to be capturing throughout the county. Are we really charging what we need to be charging? We have to look at how we increase some of these fees and what we can do to help offset some of these costs. But again, more importantly, we need to look at actuals. We do know now we have the revenues estimated, we'll call it 70 million. That's where we're at, 70 million. We can all do basic math and understand anything over 70 million in expenses is a deficit. So we're going to start running into issues. We have to look at that, how we work together, because I think as we go through the numbers and continue to work on this, we're going to find, as the chair mentioned, numbers that aren't really making sense, and how do we put it back together? A few years ago, the expenses were at 50 million. So we can work together to find some of these answers, but it's important to have it so it's very clear, so that not only do we need to understand, the public needs to be able to see this and understand it without going off into, we hear these conversations, these comments about 172 money disappeared here or there. No, nobody's hiding anything. It's always been there, but it's just been hard for the public to understand where it's at, what department is receiving, what percentage, because that's what it is. It's a lump sum. It's broken down by the different departments. No hiding money. That's going to be more clear. We have to keep working on, as a team, to get these answers. But for me, and some of you that do know me, I don't do deficit spending. I just don't do it. It might be hard up front to get this fixed, but I can guarantee you, as we work together to get it fixed, we're going to see the results on that pretty quick. One speaker made a comment about basically ignoring the roads. We can't ignore the roads. We have over 330 miles, is that correct, Steve, of roads in our county that are in disrepair. I think the last study showed them at 33%. Those that understand roads understand that the more they deteriorate, the more it costs, and it costs a lot more. And again, this board did a great job by allocating dollars to get some of these roads fixed, but that in itself is $8 to $10 million a year that needs to be committed. We're not going to fix 330 miles of roads if we don't commit to it. So we have to keep working together, find out where we can use the money most effectively. And again, use all of you guys to work together as a team. And I'm absolutely certain the new CEO is going to be sitting down with you guys on a monthly basis to really work together, how we help each other. Because sometimes you don't realize your department can help another department, vice versa. We have to look at this not as an attack, but as a way to help solve our financial issues now and into the future, so we can have better planning. I'm looking forward to hearing from my colleagues. And as the chair mentioned, there's still a lot of work to do here. A lot of work to do here, a lot of math, and we're going to get to it. And Joe Paul, I want to thank you again for some of the numbers you brought to us to help explain the issues, because it does make a difference and does make us feel a little better that we're going to get there sooner rather than later. So thank you.
Supervisor Crowe, did you want to go next?
Well, I'm grateful that you guys are admitting that we're feeling a little lost with the numbers, because I have to tell you, first of all, I would love to know where in OpenGov you're seeing fiscal year 24-25 actuals. I was able to find budgeted, I was able to find department requested, I was not able to find actuals except for 22-23 and 23-24.
I could help answer that.
Okay.
We had the departments, and thank you all the departments for doing projections on where they expect to bring their revenues in, and I have an Excel spreadsheet of that. So
it's not in OpenGov?
It's not in OpenGov, no.
Okay, so that's why none of the numbers make any sense to me. Because, I mean, being a former county department person that did budget, I couldn't follow this for anything. I'm really sorry. It's nothing against you guys. It's nothing against staff or departments. It's, we have a problem and we do not have control of the numbers. If we can't get it, and if you are explaining it, which I have a ton of notes and questions on every single one of these slides, I don't think it's worth going into that with all of you here right now. I have no problem sitting down and meeting with you on my questions, but even just the very first slide that said adopted budget for 24-25, on page, I don't know where I'm at. I think it was on 7. No. Anyhow, you had adopted budget and then you had this fiscal year's budget. Yeah, on page 10. I can't even get those numbers to match anything. So I'm a little lost. And I don't understand how without, and this is something that's going to happen in order for us to move forward, have control of the budget, get better fiscal control, but I'm gonna bring in the whole procurement policy and the lack of contract management, and we gotta be looking at big dollar amounts for savings, not little dollar amounts for savings, and we have to be able to balance the needs of our community when it comes to required services that departments have to provide and what staff levels they need to do that. If we're gonna have to cut to the level that it sounds like it's coming, I'm hopeful that Joe Paul's information will soften this, but based on the information that's been given, I feel like we're going backwards to where we're gonna have departments that are cutting their hours. We're gonna go back to, 9 to 3 or 9 to 1, where staff have to work with the public the entire time and then spend the rest of the time when the offices are not open to get the work done because there's not going to be enough staff. And if there's not gonna be enough staff, are we working with the departments on what staff can be, what staff are the ones that could be eliminated versus not eliminated? To me, it's not just about staff, it's about contracts and how much money are we spending on services, and are we getting the services out of those contracts that we need? I feel like there are big ticket contracts out there that we're not honing in on going, Joe Paul said it the other day, a contract is only good as the appropriations that are budgeted for it. And if we don't budget the appropriations for it, that contract's no good. So should we be looking at some of these high dollar amount contracts? And yes, roads are important. But when you start to impact the services that keep the county machine moving forward, it starts to have a dominoes effect. We saw it in 2012 and 2013. We saw the dominoes effect of how the economy started to impact our departments and our services, which had a negative impact on revenues that were coming in. I completely agree with Supervisor Ignacio. We have to make sure that we're charging for the services that we're providing. But that's been an ongoing conversation that we've had for years, and it takes the departments to be proactive and help us understand where could we get more reimbursement for services. I agree, we can't kick the can down the road anymore. If this is, I hate using the analogy, we gotta rip off the Band-Aid, see how bad it really is, and come up with a future plan of how we will be moving forward. Some of the other things though, when I'm looking at OpenGov, I never used OpenGov because it wasn't here yet. The ERP system has much more accurate numbers. Departments can run numbers through the ERP system that show all kinds of different variables and all kinds of different years and spans. Are we looking at, is OpenGov really working for us? Or is OpenGov becoming more of a problem and more of a labor intensive to be able to try and be transparent, but as we can tell, the transparency does not appear to be transparent, at least not to me. I agree with Joe Paul, eliminating the noise, but we kind of need to have some noise to be able to get to the bottom of what's going on. So I feel very lost up here right now. I went through as much information that I could find online, and it said to go to the county website. It should have the actual link of where it is. Because if you go to it and then you search for fiscal, if you don't know to go to OpenGov, you wouldn't even know where to find any information. There's no wording that tells you how to find it. So I know this is hard, and I feel the anxiety of everything that's going on, but also we need to hear from the collaboration. Collaboration goes two ways. It's not top down, it's bottom up. We need to collaborate to be able to come up with answers and solutions that can help us immediately and long term. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Zinger.
Yeah. I actually don't have a whole lot to add to that. And the reason being because from what I can understand, it's essentially preliminary at this point because we still need to figure out some of these big questions on what's going on. And, we have our accountant, district attorney, and B+ in math. I'm like a B in math, so I'm not going to be able to crack this one either right now on my own. So, I am hopeful that we can get to the bottom of this with the consultant and with the auditor and the budget ad hoc. And so I don't have a whole lot to add other than, we need to answer some of these big questions, figure out what exactly is going on, particularly with some of the large jumps we've seen over the last few years, because as the chair mentioned, it doesn't really logically make sense, and there's not something that at this point you can point to. So to figure that out, I just don't have much to add until we can answer some of those big questions, I guess I would say.
Supervisor Sotelo?
Thank you. I had tons of questions. And I really appreciate the ad hoc giving us a little bit of perspective because now I feel like I still have a ton of questions. I just don't know how appropriate it is for me to ask these questions when some of this may be kind of hypothetical at this point, and we really need to get to the numbers. I'm anxious to get into the numbers and to really kind of figure this out together. It looks very scary what's here and was just presented. I'm hopeful that maybe working with this Baker Tilly and diving into things that maybe it's not as bad as what we're seeing. So I'm going to hold off my questions for the time being until we see some more actual, more realistic, I guess, more actual numbers. I appreciate all the work that's been done. I don't think anybody's doing this to mislead or anything like that. I really appreciate, I think it's kind of just the perfect storm that we've kind of run into. And so it's not any one particular person's fault. I think we're all doing the best that we can. We're going to get through this. I think that we just need more time right now. And particularly myself as a supervisor sitting here, I need more time to really kind of evaluate this if these aren't the numbers that we're really looking at. So appreciate all the work that's been done. I recognize there's a lot more work to be done. And at that point, I will definitely have more comments and questions. There are some areas that are talking about cuts and different things that right now I'm not in favor of, but like I said, I'm going to hold off on that because I don't know what the end result will be, and I will wait until that time to make those comments. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Sotelo. And just a few things to wrap up that I didn't include, some issues to address. I talked about how we had essentially these overinflated adopted budgets, in the range of $30–40 million, counting on the fact that vacancy budgeting was going to make up the difference. Well, with this budget, we actually used an adopted budget as the baseline going forward and went to department heads and asked them to reduce a relatively small amount. So that off the bat should tell you that that baseline that we started with we should be starting with the actuals as the baseline. The projected year-end actuals should be the baseline going forward as opposed to the adopted budget. So that's one red flag out there. There were no pay increases incorporated into this data. We have contracts that are up. We don't have any pay increases on the table. Again, where are these jumps coming from? Personnel is generally your biggest expense. So if there aren't pay increases incorporated into the data, then it just doesn't make sense that the budget is skyrocketing like this. Now I'm just going to say for all the department heads in the room, we talked about Joe Paul, admin, Baker Tilly, we need your help. What I'm going to ask as the chair of the board is that you take a dive in to your budgets, that you take a look at the projections, your actuals for 24-25, and then take a closer look at your current 25-26 recommended budget, and please provide some commentary to the admin team, to the auditor's office, and maybe we need a whole, department head meeting at some point relatively soon where we all come to the table, as in admin, auditor, department heads, and figure this whole thing out. That would be my suggestion going forward. Other than that, we're gonna get there. It's gonna be a bumpy road. I don't believe it's as bumpy as this, but we're gonna get there. That said,
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead,
I'm
sorry.
sorry, do you
Further
mind?
comments, I
You
apologize. I didn't
sparked some thoughts in my head of things over the years that I'm just looking back one, we need to see a more of a breakdown of admin and the cost of admin. I don't understand why we have roads in admin. That doesn't make sense to me. That's not an admin cost, and so I'm very confused why that's there. So what can be done to separate out some of this admin cost? Because it just seems that is just an area that needs to be defined. Cost plan. Okay, I remember when I got the numbers for a cost plan years ago, and the cost plan was like $3,000 for the clerk's office, and maybe $25,000 for the elections office, and maybe $35,000 for the recorder's office. And I thought that was outrageous. Well, the clerk recorder gave us a memo from the board, and over $35,000 for the 3 departments is cost plan. I don't understand that. What are our support departments doing that is costing that much? How can we dive into our support departments, IT, auditing, admin, HR, all of the support departments? Because if we're asking departments to cut, and I brought this up before, you're asking departments to cut 5%, but you're increasing their cost plan by over 50%, which actually equates to an increase in their budget, they're never gonna be able to balance that. So how do we do that? And then really identifying road projects, and I know, Steve, we've talked about it. We can't budget things that we can't get done. If we can't get them done, we shouldn't be budgeting them. If we can get them done, we should budget them and be realistic about what we can get done with the people that we have. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything further? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adopt a resolution introducing 25-26 recommended budget, which was required by law by May 30th for public review, and to schedule a public hearing to begin Monday, June 9th, 2025 in the board chambers at 9. Have a motion?
Second, sir.
Oh, we have first from Supervisor Zanger, second from Supervisor Velasquez. Roll call vote, please.
Sorry, 1 second. Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, of course.
Could we modify the motion? There's no attached resolution. It would just be to schedule the public hearing for the June 9th. It's a slight modification.
As stated. Is that okay as stated? Motion first?
Yes.
Second? Question?
Thank you. I actually appreciate that we're not recommending adoption of this, that it's just moving this forward essentially to the June 9th, because I was going to say I'm really uncomfortable voting in favor of this recommended, because I'm not in favor of it. I don't even know where the information is. So as long as all that we're doing right now is just moving it forward to June 9th, I'm okay with that. I just wanted to clarify, so thank you.
Thank you, and if needed, we will be moving it all the way up to June 20th after the 9th. We have up until the 20th to really get this thing ironed out.
You actually have till June 30th.
June 30th, but
Yeah.
you have to have a 10-day window, I was told. As far as we can
As
go,
long-
we're gonna go.
Yeah, I think you can do the hearing on the 9th, start it, and you can go all the way through.
All the way to the
Yes,
30th.
to the
Okay.
30th.
As long
Sounds
as
great.
we have to just announce a day certain that
Yeah,
we'll
date
push it
certain.
All
on
right.
to.
I would expect us to probably be going up until the end of the clock there, so. We have first, we have a second. Anything further? Roll call vote.
Supervisor Kozmicki,
Yes.
Supervisor Zanger,
Yes.
Supervisor Sotelo,
Yes.
Supervisor Curro,
Yes.
Supervisor Velasquez.
Yes.
5-0 vote, motion passes.
Mr. Chair, can I
yes.
make one comment?
Go ahead, yes.
My only comment is, I hear what you're saying about actuals and doing projections and seeing where we're at for the end of the fiscal year, but I think every department needs to recognize, and we need to be educated, some departments are in cycles. Sometimes they're 2-year cycles, they're 4-year cycles, they're 8-year cycles. If you have to explain why your cycle is different because you're a different type of department, please make sure that you include that in your information to the ad hoc. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hearing nothing further, we are adjourned.